Someone asks you for a favor you don't have the time for. And before your brain even finishes processing the question, your mouth is already saying yes. Not because you thought about it, not because you wanted to. Some part of you answered before you did. You spend the rest of the day quietly resentful, rearranging your whole schedule around a sentence you didn't mean, and telling yourself the same thing you always tell yourself. I'm just a nice person. What if that sentence is the biggest lie you tell about yourself? Most people who say yes too much think they're describing their personality. Generous, easygoing, low maintenance, good in a group. And on the surface, that story holds together, because it feels like a choice, every single time. You chose to help. You chose to stay quiet. You chose to smooth things over, but choices have a certain texture to them. They feel considered. They feel like they came from you. This doesn't feel like that, not if you're honest. It feels like a reflex. And reflexes don't come from personality. They come from training. Welcome back to Mind to Act. Today we're breaking down the real psychology of people-pleasing, why it has almost nothing to do with kindness and everything to do with a nervous system that learned, a long time ago, that being agreeable was the price of staying safe. Let's start with where this idea actually comes from, because it isn't internet pop psychology. In the 1990s and 2000s, trauma researcher Pete Walker, working clinically with survivors of chronic childhood stress, noticed a pattern that didn't fit the existing model. For decades, psychology had described the stress response with two options: fight or flight, confront the threat, or escape it. But Walker kept seeing a third group of people who, under threat, did neither. They didn't fight, they didn't run, they appeased. They scanned the room for what the other person needed and became that, instantly, automatically, before any conscious decision was made. Walker gave this response a name: fawning. And he argued it deserved to sit right next to fight, flight, and freeze as a core survival strategy, not a personality trait. Here's the part that changes everything. Fawning isn't something you do. It's something that happens to you, the same way flinching happens to you. Imagine a household where a parent's mood could shift without warning, where calm could turn to anger over something as small as a tone of voice or a look on your face. A child in that house doesn't get to choose their strategy. They get whatever their nervous system can build fast enough to survive. And for a lot of children, the fastest, cheapest, most reliable strategy is this: read the room before the room reads you. Become whatever keeps the temperature down. Never be the reason it gets worse. That child isn't born agreeable. That child is built agreeable, one unpredictable evening at a time. Here's the simplest way to picture what's happening underneath. Think of your nervous system as a smoke detector. Its entire job is to scan for danger and sound the alarm. In a safe environment, that detector calibrates to real fires: loud, obvious, rare. But in a chaotic environment, the detector recalibrates to something else entirely. It starts treating disagreement as danger. It starts treating someone's disappointment as smoke. It starts going off the second another person's face changes, and once it starts sounding an alarm at a raised eyebrow, saying no to anyone, ever, registers in your body the same way running into a burning building would. Not uncomfortable, unsafe. So how does this actually look now? As an adult, in your job, your friendships, your relationship? Here are the signs. Sign 1. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. Someone bumps into you, and you say sorry. A meeting runs long because of someone else's tangent, and you say sorry for the time. You didn't cause the delay, the mess, or the inconvenience, and you apologize anyway, instantly, before you've even thought about whether an apology is owed. This isn't politeness. Politeness is occasional and situational. This is constant, and it's aimed inward. Somewhere along the way, you learned that taking the blame first, even for things you didn't do, was safer than waiting to find out whether you'd be blamed anyway. Sign 2. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. Before you send a text asking for something reasonable, you've already drafted it 4 times. You've already imagined how they might react badly, and pre-written your response to soften it. You're not planning what you want to say. You're planning how to prevent a reaction that hasn't occurred, based on a threat that may not exist. That's not overthinking. That's a smoke detector running simulations, trying to put the fire out before it starts. Sign 3. You feel responsible for other people's emotions. Someone in the room goes quiet, and you immediately scan your last 10 sentences for what you might have said wrong. Their bad mood becomes your project to fix. If they're upset, some part of you assumes it's about you, or at minimum, that it's now your job to manage. Genuine empathy notices someone's pain. This is different. This is treating someone else's internal weather as your responsibility to regulate, because as a child, it may well have been. A parent's mood might have actually determined whether the evening was safe. Your nervous system never got the memo that this stopped being true. Sign 4. Saying no produces a physical reaction, not just a mental one. It's not that you'd prefer to say yes. It's that no sits in your throat like something physically stuck. Your heart rate climbs, your face goes hot. Some people describe a genuine wave of nausea. This is not you being dramatic. This is your body treating the word no as a threat cue, the exact same circuitry that would fire if something were actually chasing you, misfiring at a completely harmless request. Sign 5. You over-explain every boundary you attempt. You almost never just say no. You say no, followed by 3 reasons, an apology, and a promise to make it up to them later. A genuine boundary needs 0 justification, but you build a legal case for the right to decline, because somewhere inside, you don't believe no is allowed to stand on its own. You believe it needs defending, or it will be punished. Sign 6. You feel safest when you're useful. Being needed feels like the one guaranteed way to stay wanted. So you become excellent at anticipating what people need before they ask. You remember their coffee order, their bad week, their upcoming appointment. This looks like thoughtfulness, and sometimes it is. But underneath, there's often a quieter calculation running. If I'm useful enough, they won't leave. If I stop being useful, what's left to keep them here? Sign 7. Resentment builds silently, then leaks out sideways. You never actually say you're overwhelmed. You never say the favor was too much. Instead, weeks later, something small sets off a reaction that seems wildly out of proportion to the moment. A curt tone, a passive comment, a sudden coldness nobody can explain. That's not you being petty. That's a backlog. Every yes you didn't mean gets stored somewhere, and eventually, the storage runs out of room. Now here's the part that matters most. The part almost nobody says out loud. This pattern was never selfish. It was never manipulative. It was never even really a choice. It was a genuinely brilliant adaptation to an environment where staying likable meant staying safe. The nervous system that built this in you was trying to protect you, and for a long time, it worked. But adaptations don't come with expiration dates. They keep running long after the danger that built them is gone, in rooms that were never actually unsafe, with people who were never actually a threat. So, what does this actually cost you? It costs you the ability to know your own preferences, because you've spent so long tracking everyone else's that your own barely register anymore. Ask a chronic people pleaser what they want for dinner, and watch the pause. It costs you real intimacy, because people can't truly know someone who's constantly performing agreeableness instead of showing up as themselves. And it costs you trust in your own read of situations, because you've trained yourself to distrust your own discomfort in favor of managing someone else's. So how do you actually work with this, not against it? 3 principles. Principle 1. Treat the physical reaction as information, not instruction. That wave of discomfort, when you consider saying no, isn't telling you no, is dangerous. It's telling you your alarm is old and miscalibrated. You don't have to obey an alarm to acknowledge it went off. Notice the racing heart, the tight throat, and then ask yourself a separate question. Is there an actual threat here, or is this an old alarm responding to a new, safe room? Principle 2. Practice on low-stakes rooms first. You don't build a new response to no by starting with the highest stakes relationship in your life. Start smaller. Decline the extra task at work that isn't yours. Say you'd rather not, to a restaurant choice you don't care about. These interactions feel almost embarrassingly minor. That's the point. You're not trying to solve your whole history in one conversation. You're giving your nervous system small, safe, repeated proof that no doesn't end in disaster. Principle 3. Let the apology be honest, not automatic. You don't have to eliminate every apology. Some things genuinely deserve one. The goal isn't to become someone who never says sorry. The goal is to only say it when it's true, and to notice the difference between an apology that means something and an apology that's just a reflex trying to keep the peace before anyone's even upset. There's an old idea in trauma work that survival responses are not character flaws, they're closed loops, patterns that made complete sense in the environment that built them and simply never got updated once that environment changed. The fawn response isn't proof you're weak or fake or lacking a spine. It's proof that some version of you, a long time ago, figured out exactly how to stay safe in a room that wasn't. That version of you did the job perfectly. The only thing left to do now is let them know the room has changed. So tell me, out of the 7 signs we covered today, which one hit closest to home? Which one made you think of a specific room, a specific person, a specific moment you've never quite been able to explain? Tell me in the comments, and know this. If you've spent years being called easygoing, agreeable, or just so nice, you weren't easy, you were careful. There's a difference, and you deserve to know it. If this video named something you've never had words for, hit like and share it with someone who apologizes for things that aren't their fault. Someone who's always fine, always available, always the one holding everyone else together. They might need to hear that it has a name, and that it isn't who they are. Subscribe to Mind to Act so we can keep decoding the hidden corners of the mind together. Goodbye, and see you next time.